In antiquated occasions, individuals had a somewhat solid confidence in enchantment and folklore when it came to deciphering their general surroundings. The world as they saw it was to a great extent impacted by the nearness of a higher god. The old Greek logicians carried a reviving new way to deal with this contemporary philosophical worldview. They split away from the convention of fanciful clarifications, and left on an understanding to a great extent dependent on thinking and proof. Old Greece saw the ascent of a plenty of scholars. Among these, various key figures stood apart for their original work in thoughts and reasoning. Their recondite philosophical thoughts on crude common science, just as the moral use of their philosophical qualities in the public arena, earned them the acknowledgement that lives right up till today. Presently we are going to see the most known and significant thinkers of old Greece. Parmenides was a known adherent of Pythagoras, another eminent figure in the philosophical worldview of antiquated Greece. His sonnets and contemplations have consistently appeared to be essentially impacted by the logician Xenophanes, driving most students of history to accept that he probably been his understudy. Among the pre-Socratic logicians, the individuals who were in the spotlight before the hour of Socrates, he is viewed as one of the most critical ones. In his lone-known work, the relevantly titled Sonnet on Nature, he attempts to unwind the greatest inquiry of all: is it or is it not? His endeavor at translating this philosophical inquiry, an expository one, some may state, prompts a preferably incomprehensible articulation rather over a fantastic answer. Parmenides expresses that everything that is must have consistently been, since any self-assertive nothing would need to originate from nothing itself. Furthermore, thus, it turns into an oddity since it is difficult to consider what isn't, and once more, it is likewise difficult to consider something that can't be thought of. Ensuing thinkers would proceed to attempt to improve these philosophical inconceivabilities. Another significant figure from the pre-Socratic period, Anaxagoras of Clazomenae, was a compelling rationalist and researcher who lived and instructed in Athens for right around 30 years. His philosophical perspectives rotated around nature itself. Similar to the case with a large portion of the scholars in Old Greece, his thoughts stood out and crashed from contemporary philosophies and convictions, and this drove him to confront dangerous results. Anaxagoras is attributed, similar to the first, to build up a way of thinking in quite a wild total in Athens, a spot where it would proceed to arrive at its pinnacle and keep on affecting society for a long time to come. He gave a lot of his opportunity to clarifying nature for what it's worth, accepting the universe as an undifferentiated mass until it was worked upon by a profound segment which he called new signifying mind. He accepted that in the physical world, everything contained a piece of everything else. Nothing was unadulterated all alone, and everything was disordered together in mayhem. The utilization of new doles out a specific movement and significance to this confusion. Anaximander of Miletus is the celebrated understudy of, and from numerous points of view a philosophical replacement to, Thales himself. He is credited just like the main known essayist on reasoning in light of the fact that the principal enduring lines of Western way of thinking were composed by him. He is additionally notable in the fields of early science and topography. He made the principal world picture of an open universe, a move away from the thought of a shut universe, making him the main theoretical cosmologist in mankind's history. He further broadened the philosophical perspectives on his Lord, proposing an asha or a rule that he accepted to be the premise of the entire universe. Be that as it may, in contrast to Thales, he felt that this premise had an apeion, a boundless substance, that went about as a hotspot for everything. This source went about as the prime purpose of separation for total inverses like hot and chilly, light and dull, etc. A lot of his work stays shortened, particularly on account of ensuing ages of thinkers. Be that as it may, he was for sure probably the best psyche in antiquated Greece. Empedocles was one of the most significant pre-Socratic period rationalists, and considerably increasingly remarkable were his sonnets that proceeded to affect later writers, including any semblance of Lucretius. One of his philosophical tourist spots has been his affirmation of the four-component hypothesis of issue. It expresses that all issue is fundamentally made out of four essential components: earth, air, fire, and water. This got probably the most punctual hypothesis to have been proposed on molecular material science, albeit a few students of history consider it to be an intricate exertion to discredit the non-dualism hypothesis of Parmenides. He essentially dismissed the nearness of any void or void space, in this manner totally repudiating the philosophical belief system of Parmenides. He set forth the possibility of inverse intention powers associated with the structure of the world, to be specific, love as the reason for association, and conflict as the reason for partition. He likewise proceeded to turn into the main individual to give a transformative record on the improvement of species. When most savants in antiquated Greece were utilizing reason and information to decipher nature, Zeno of Ilion was committing his opportunity to clarifying the numerous riddles and catch-22s of movement and majority. It is important that he endeavored to clarify opposing ends present in the physical world numerous years prior to the improvement of rationale. Zeno further extended and shielded the philosophical belief systems built up by Parmenides, which were confronting a lot of resistance from normal feeling around then. He propounded different catch-22s himself, which were bantered among later ages of savants. Most of contemporary contentions on his catch-22s were on the unbounded division of existence. For example, if there is a separation, there is likewise a large portion of that separation, etc. Zeno was the first in philosophical history to show that the idea of vastness existed. Another pre-Socratic Greek logician, Pythagoras, is known unquestionably more for his speculations and thoughts in arithmetic than in reasoning. Truth be told, he is most popular for the hypothesis in geometry that is named after him. He is one of the most natural names in pre-Socratic culture, yet we know shockingly minimal about him. He is credited with establishing a philosophical school that amassed a considerable number of devotees. It was at this school Pythagoras attempted to locate a shared agreement between reality and the pragmatic parts of theory. His lessons were not carefully kept to what we know as theory, yet additionally included basic issues like guidelines on living, what everyday nourishment to eat, etc. He viewed the world as the ideal concordance and put together his instructing with respect to how to have an agreeable existence. Socrates set out on a totally different point of view of accomplishing down-to-earth results through the use of reasoning in our day-by-day lives, something that was to a great extent missing in the methodology of pre-Socratic way of thinking. He straightforwardly moved away from the steady physical hypotheses that past logicians had been so bustling deciphering and absorbing, and endeavored to build up a moral framework dependent on human thinking as opposed to different, and regularly generally discussed, religious regulations. Rather than spewing thoughts dependent on his individual translations, he would address individuals tirelessly on their convictions, and attempt to discover meanings of temperances by speaking with anybody broadcasting to have such characteristics. Socrates turned into a key figure and amassed various adherents. However, he additionally made numerous foes. In the end, his convictions and reasonable way to deal with theory prompted his execution. Be that as it may, one may contend that his philosophical suffering, more than everything else, transformed him into the notorious figure that he is today. Plato was an understudy of Socrates and was obviously impacted by the philosophical methodology of his lord. Yet, while Socrates was tirelessly busy with deciphering theory dependent on human thinking, Plato consolidated the two significant methodologies of pre-Socratic power and normal philosophy with Socratic moral religious philosophy. The establishment of Plato's way of thinking is triple: tongues, morals, and material science, the main issue of harmony being the hypothesis of structures. For him, the most elevated of structures was that of the great, which he took as the reason for being and information. In material science, he concurred with numerous Pythagorean perspectives. A large portion of his works, particularly his most renowned work The Republic, join different parts of morals, political way of thinking, and transcendentalism among others, into a deliberate, significant, and material way of thinking. Aristotle of Stagira was the most powerful among the followers of Plato. His understanding of things was increasingly founded on realities gained from the experience individuals would pick up in their lives, a methodology that contrasted from that of his lord, who favored a viewpoint that was past the availability of the physical faculties. He ended up being an innovative essayist and similarly inventive polymath, bit by bit recomposing pre-set-up ideas in practically all subject matters that he experienced. When human information was still unreasonably summed, he separated this information into particular classifications, for example, morals, science, arithmetic, and material science, an arrangement designed despite everything utilized today. Aristotle is genuinely a key figure in antiquated Greek way of thinking, whose impact proceeded to have an effect root past the limits of Old Greece. Thales of Miletus gets the top spot on this rundown for speaking to a crucial point in Old Greek way of thinking, from which ensuing ages of celebrated scholars, arguments, metaphysicists, and savants grew. He is hailed among history specialists as the dad of Old Greek way of thinking. Most of Thales' belief systems originate from Aristotle, who focuses to Thales as the primary individual to have researched fundamental standards, for example, the starting point of issue. Thales is additionally said to be the author of the school of normal way of thinking. As a thinker, Thales infrequently bound his exploration to the constrained territory of contemporary information and was effectively occupied with understanding different parts of information, for example, reasoning, arithmetic, science, and geology. He is additionally said to have built up a very much characterized standard to hypothesize why changes happen. He proposed water as the essential hidden segment of the world. Thales was exceptionally regarded among antiquated Greeks, and his speculations as a rule added importance and expansiveness to previously existing thoughts on nature. The development of the whole Western philosophical convention can be followed back to the period of antiquated Greek way of thinking. The advancement of reasoning and basic speculation in antiquated Greece began someplace around the 6th century BC and apparently assumed an essential job in the ensuing improvement of the information that we have today. Scholars working on changing ways to deal with their philosophical excursion, looking for answers to known mysteries, and making incalculable more in transit. This began with the principal endeavor by Thales to take a gander at the world from a precise viewpoint. The resulting companion of basic masterminds proceeded to enhance this methodology into regular science, transcendentalism and, in the end, moral religious philosophy, prompting the development of theory as we probably am aware it today.